Hello traders, and welcome back to another market update. My name is Nick, and in today's video what we're going to do is take a look at the currency market, see what's going on in terms of technical analysis on some of the major currency pairs. So let's go ahead and start here with Euro USD. Interesting stuff going on with this pair. What you can see is we actually kind of had this trend line that we were watching, right, where we had the level holding as a support level along the way. Right? Well, when price came down to this area again, my initial idea would be that we would see a bounce and continuation of this trend, but that's not actually what we ended up see happening. We saw price break underneath this level and start to pull back. Well, where is it pulling back to? Well, what's interesting is it's finding some sort of resistance here along this trend line that it recently broke through. The idea here being that we've broken through, we're now retesting it, and now my bias has switched a bit more to the bearish side with the idea that we did break through a significant level of support. We could also see this bearish market continue as price does look like it wants to kind of show some signs of weakness and continue to roll over. If we do roll over, one level to consider, of course, would be a short-term target here, potentially of heading back to this area of support. If we look left, this level here has been pretty significant to buyers and sellers, right? So the idea being if we could make a move back down to this area, we could find some sort of a bounce. So there might be a short-term trade if you like the idea of trading trend line breaks. Of course, do your own analysis as per usual. Let's go ahead and take a look at GBP USD. What's interesting here about pound dollar right now is that we have this downward trend line and it continues to hold very, very nicely. Now, people sometimes ask, they say, well, how many times should a trend line hold before it gets broken? How many bounces? And usually I don't like to try and put a label or number on that sort of thing. I'd rather just treat a resistance level as a resistance until proven otherwise. So this level could continue to hold. So we had sellers, 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 right? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how you count it, 6 times where price continued to respect this area. Now, one thing to consider also with this pound dollar is that we talked about this particular zone here. Sure enough, price did hold as a strong level of resistance in that area. Price overall sold off short term if you're looking at the lower time frames. But here on the daily chart, or the 4-hour chart, the idea here was that we did see a initial spike to the downside. We reversed and are currently retesting that area. My big target there, if I were watching this pair as a potential target, I would say down here at that recent low. We did put in a double bottom there. We'll see if price can make another tap to the downside there, or if we're going to see a bullish break. If we see a bullish break, which I think is less likely, but still possible, if we break to the upside, right, we could see something like this play out where we break and retest the trend line to go long, showing some signs of bullish strength. However, we don't quite see that yet, and my bias remains to the downside until further notice. Let's take a look at dollar yen. Dollar yen here, interestingly, kind of breaking above this level that we talked about here, and you can see it looks like it wants to even retest this area. If it retests there at this point, I would consider this more of a bullish idea due to the fact that, again, we had resistance in this area, we broke above, and the old saying is resistance can turn into support, right? So let's move on to gold. Everybody likes to talk about gold, and what you can see here is that this previous level of resistance got broken through and now is being retested. We're still holding this area on the bullish side, so we'll see if price can decide to break up. If we do decide to break up, a simple level to watch out for, of course, would be that recent structure high. And if we decide to break lower, if we do see this market intend to kind of continue lower, one level to me that has been sticking out is the idea here of this kind of shelf area where we did see a lot of rejection before breaking out. Right? So price was holding and ultimately shot through and broke through on kind of this recent gold move that we've seen. Something to consider there on gold. Brent crude is in fact pulling back to this level here that we talked about. You can see this trend line, as we've been watching, did in fact get retested as we talked about, which is awesome. Now the idea here is we see some hesitation. Question will be, can this hold enough to actually start to get us going back up? And if so, can we make it back to this area here right around that 68.99 level? So watching that one to see what decides to play out. WTI crude, very similar. You can see holding the trend line as we watched on the last several market updates. So we'll see what we get there on WTI crude as well. Euro yen here, you can see actually a really interesting chart here. You can see price forming a potential top here. We did have a level of resistance, and now the question will be, can this level hold as a resistance, or are we going to break and continue the trend? right? We do have this kind of trending structure on euro yen where you have, a series of higher lows, right? And higher highs, right? Here you have higher high, higher high, higher highs, right? Question will be, can we break through and continue this upward trend? If we're gonna see that momentum continue, really what bears likely wanna see is a strong break above this level. Bulls would like to see a strong break above this bearish level. And if you're a bear, probably wanna see this level hold, look for some further confirmation, and then look to potentially trade back down to this trend line, right? If I were a bear, I'd probably be looking to get out of the way if price got back to this trend line, as it has been holding very nicely. The counter trend here turning into a pretty strong trend in itself, right? And we've drawn this long-term, if we draw this long-term level, you can see we are kind of trading above this trend line depending on how you draw it. And with that fresh break, we could see continued momentum to the upside, something to consider there on euro yen. Let's talk about pound Aussie, which we've been watching, and you can see has actually held our level of support really well. We've talked about this trend line here on the daily chart, and you can see making a nice series of higher lows, and so far so good on holding it once more. We'll see if we can get some continued rally there on pound Aussie. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of today's video. We'll catch you back tomorrow.